And welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, Moral Excellence in the Workplace. We have already completed 7 chapters, so give yourself a hand. We are now going to start in chapter 8 tonight, and this chapter is kind of in a different dynamic we're going to be teaching from, because now we're going to be talking to managers or those who want to be managers. We're really going to hit on leadership and what it means to be a leader and how you can be a leader. So on page 137, so we're going to start chapter 8, Management Leads with Character, the overview. It says, you might ask yourself, why is the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program teaching about management skills when there are hundreds of books on the marketplace about management techniques? Topics can cover time management, classroom management, staff management, budget, and finance planning, and so much more. Yet, emphasis on character management is what this program is all about. Essentially, we must learn how to manage our character first before we can successfully manage others. Notice the difference between the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program and other programs. This program emphasizes on who you are within, because you can be great at finances, you can be great at time management, but who's to say that when you're honest about finances? Who's to say you're honest in other situations, that you're respectful, that you're responsible in those areas? So the Peaceful Solution really says those are great, but you have to figure out who you are within. And this is what we really go over in this chapter is before you can manage others, you must first learn how to manage and control yourself. So what have we went over in the previous chapters that differentiates the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program from other programs? Well, in chapter 1, we covered the difference between character and personality and how that affects the workplace. Character is who you are, and notice that it dictates how you treat others in the environment. It's your beliefs. But personality is your likes and your dislikes. And if you think about how some people are chosen for their job, sometimes it's based off of their personality. Oh, they're kind, they're talkative, they're really outgoing, which is what you would want in a salesperson, correct? Someone that would always, go out and talk to other people. But the character is also what's really important, because you can have someone that is making sales and, encouraging others, but who's to say at the end of the day you have the right amount of money in your drawer? Who's to say that they're being responsible in other aspects? So that's why we notice the character and the personality and how that ripples out and affects the workplace. We also emphasize the importance of moral values to character. And this is where we go through in chapter 1 how when we are in a workplace, we really focus, our focus is not just on ourselves, but it ripples down and affects others. And when we make choices, and our choices need to reflect that we are a moral person by thinking of morality. Morality can be divided into 3 basic categories: behavior and attitude towards all life, possessions and property, and the environment. So if it hurts any of those things, then it's not a moral behavior. In chapter 2, it's entitled Self-Control, the Essential Ingredient to a Successful Environment. Now, something that I really thought was interesting is if you look at the definition of self-control, notice the first thing it says that self-control means learning. Keep that in mind as we are teaching and as we are teachers. You're learning to control your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, and realize that that will ripple out to either rewards or consequences. But focus on that word learning. That's what we're doing. So as we go through and you implement this into your workplace, it's not going to be right away because you're learning. We went on to talk about how using self-control to handle your emotions. Don't let your emotions handle you. And that goes back to learning to control your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And that respect requires self-control. And why is that? Because self-control is a foundation to all moral behavior. Respect is a foundation to all positive interactions. So first you have to know how to control yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions before you can start to show that respect to other people. In chapter 3, we went over moral ways to obtain your belongings. Notice moral, which means legal, which means the way you obtain these possessions will not end you up. You will not end up in jail or getting arrested because they're moral. You accept the decisions others make concerning their belongings. And also the proper use of workplace items. Some items are meant for certain things. And, sorry, did I say we're in chapter 3 now? I think so. Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, proper use of workplace items and how every business, every place owns something, but it also has a proper use for it. Then to chapter 4, we talked about ask, more than just a 3-letter word, and how asking shows respect for authority, the rules, and policies, and how the phrase ask forgiveness, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission, is not true. Because notice that you're saying I have to ask forgiveness. I am going to ask forgiveness. Notice the word ask. You still have to ask for that. So why not prevent that and just ask permission in the first place? And I started to think about, if I was to do that, why would I do that? Why would I say it's better to ask forgiveness? Because I obviously know the answer I would get would be no. So why make that choice in the first place? Going on, we talked about how asking minimizes or avoids conflict between coworkers, and to always be consistent. Don't just ask when you're around this person or that person, or when your supervisor is around, or when you're around certain people. Always be consistent. And this is the key to building a positive character, is consistency, making those choices. And remember that consistency of positivity builds your reputation. And then chapter 5, we went over how respect is given freely. It's not something that's earned, it is given freely. Respect is the foundation of all positive interactions, and that true leaders are those that can show respect to others even when they are being disrespected. That is something that is really hard to swallow no matter how long you are in the Peaceful Solution Character Education program. You must show that respect to others no matter how you are being treated. And then chapter 6, responsibility brings results. Responsibility brings results, and it's all about having the right attitude. If you go into your workplace expecting people to behave in a disrespectful way, in an irresponsible way, you're already setting yourself to have a bad day. So how you go into your workplace is probably how your day is going to go. And then the second point is positive interaction is in the workplace is everyone's responsibility. It's not just the manager's responsibility or the employee's responsibility, it's everyone. It's a group effort. Remember the phrase, the strength of society lies in the conduct of every individual. If you want to make a place that is that works together and we're always going to have conflicts, but there are ways to avoid those conflicts. There are ways to peacefully have a place that you can work where people aren't tiptoeing around each other. And even if things do arise, you can solve them because each person knows that you're going to be respectful, that maybe you might be disrespectful, but in that time, you can go back and say, this is what has occurred, and I'd like you to forgive me because that was a moment where I realized that I need to work on this, and that's okay to say. Now, chapter 7, which is where they ended last week, chapter 7 is entitled, Honesty is a Must in the Workplace. Honesty means following the rules. And if you go through that chapter on the bottom of every page, you will see a lot about honesty means this. And at the end of that chapter, it actually has an honesty checklist. So if you're wondering if you're an honest person, go look at that checklist. And the last point is a lack of honesty can cause conflicts, resentment, and distrust. Now, all of that to say that the Peaceful Solution focuses on the character, who you are within, before we even focus on anything else, because we realize that in order to do anything, you have to do what? Change the hearts and the minds of the people. It goes back to the responsibility book. In the responsibility book, in the note to the teacher, page 1 and 2, it says, teach a man how to fish, and you'll feed him for a lifetime. And that's what the Peaceful Solution is really striving to do, to teach people how to fish. You have gotten this job but how can you maintain this job? How can you grow from there? So now we're back on page 137, and it says, who is a manager? Although there are many ways this question can be answered, the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program identifies a manager as a leader. Everyone begins first by managing their own lives as individuals, in a family, in the workplace, and in society as a whole. Now, I would underline that, because you first have to deal with yourself, your own lives, your family, and it ripples out. We should lead ourselves in moral conduct, in positive character, and in having concern for others and the environment as well. Notice those are the 3 steps of morality. Every workplace has managers who lead the business. It might be the owner, the CEO, executive board, supervisor, or another employee who has tenure. The fact is that managers lead in many ways. They uphold rules and policies that create a work atmosphere where employees can be productive and successful. They structure the workplace to promote respectability and mediate conflicts between coworkers, to maintain a peaceful work environment. Most importantly, managers lead by their example. Now, as you can see, managers' jobs are very important. So I'm going to put this question out to you, and then we'll get back to it on page 145. When you look on the internet about leaders, one of the biggest questions are, why do managers get paid more and do less? Why do managers get paid more and do less? Now, keep that question in mind, because I'm not saying that question is true, and I'm not saying that question is false, but why would people think that? I want you to keep that in mind. Going over to page 138, it says, anyone with determination and a willingness to learn can become an effective manager and example to others. Underline the word effective. The ability to successfully manage or lead is a combination of personality and character traits, as well as developing various management skills. In the previous chapters, we explored the rewards and consequences of both positive and negative character traits in the workplace. We learned that character traits, such as self-control, respect, and honesty, are crucial in creating a work environment that is safe, caring, and productive. So as you can see here, there's going to be a mixture in every workplace of positive and negative character traits. But our goal is to recognize those and try to weed them out. In this final chapter, notice what we're going to focus on in this final chapter. It's a lot. We're going to focus on skills to become managers and leaders. We will develop a plan for how to most effectively manage others in the workplace. We will learn that one of the most important aspects of managing is to motivate and encourage others to interact with a greater degree of respect, self-control, and fairness. This includes learning ways to discourage negative, hurtful, and counterproductive interactions. Managers will learn of the importance of maintaining a positive moral character so they can handle daily stress and unexpected challenges, serving as an example to those who look for instruction and support. So managers, we really have a big job, because we don't just deal with the things that are in our own lives. We are also managing, leading, and instructing others. And people look to us for that support, for that guidance, for that direction. And it's something that really stuck out to me here through all of this is that you're going to learn ways to discourage negative, hurtful, and counterproductive interactions. How many interactions have you seen in, whether it's in your work area or another work area, and you're like, that could have been avoided. That could have been avoided. Someone kept their mouth shut. Someone just took a moment to just calm down. Those interactions could have been avoided. But now think about when you're in your workplace. Are you as easy to see that could have been avoided as well? Sometimes it depends on where your focus is. So when we are in our workplaces or when we evaluate our areas, really focus, or like our days, really focus and see what interactions were productive and what caused things to lead to things to not work as well. And this is what we're focusing on, what works and what doesn't within the standards of morality. So going on to page 139, it says Chapter 8, Lesson Plan. Topic, Management Leads with Character. So the purpose, which is the goal of this lesson, is that students will focus on skills and traits needed to become an effective manager and leader. The materials we need are pens and pencils, a copy of a listening scenario for Activity 2, and then a student post-test assessment form. Procedure 1, review the previous lesson, honesty. A must in the workplace by asking the following questions. What does it mean to be honest? To be honest means to be truthful, fair, free from lies, and sincere. And I wrote by it on page 153, page 135, it has an honesty checklist. So if you're wondering if you're being honest, you go to that checklist and see if you're exhibiting these behaviors. Honesty is also being responsible with inventory, making sure that you thoroughly go through all the inventory if that's your job, or putting the tools away at the end of the day. B, give examples of honest behaviors in the workplace. Now, this could be being truthful, taking the allotted time for breaks and lunch, and not usurping authority. And C, how does honesty affect the workplace? It can cause loss of time and money, make the work environment tense and conflictive. Now, why do we ask these questions before we go into the next chapter? Because you want to see if the goal of the previous chapter is met. If your students cannot answer these questions, then it's probably best that you don't move on to this chapter, because all of these chapters build onto each other. So if we don't understand the importance of honesty, then as we go forward to talk about managing, it might not make sense. So really ask these questions, and then also ask for examples in that work area, that business. Well, how have you seen how dishonesty has affected your workplace? And how have you seen the benefits of being honest? So going to page 139, it says, ask students how many of them are managers in their workplaces or desire to be in a supervisory position. I think that's a very important question for various reasons, because you're asking people what their goal is, but the next question of who desires to be in a supervisory position, you might have just opened someone's mind to say, I can actually lead, I can actually do this, it's possible for me to be able to lead someone, to be in this position, because in every work area, there's people from different walks of life. You don't know what those individuals have been told. Some of them might have been told, you're going to be nothing because of what you did when you were younger, what you did when you were in high school. And as they go in these work areas and these businesses, they are looking for something to be. So whenever you ask these questions and you show that care and concern, you're actually opening someone's mind to, I can be something, I can move on, I don't have to stay at this part, at this level, I can actually be promoted to something, and you're showing them, yes, you can, but this is what is going to be required of you. If you want to move up, this is what is required. It says, tell students that in today's lesson, they will learn that successfully managing others begins with managing ourselves. That cannot be highlighted or emphasized enough. All starts within. It is a combination of character and personality traits as an impersonal, and that means as involving relations between people and relationships. As involving relations between people and relationships. And community skills. And then you're going to have students read the introduction found on page 145. So the goal of this lesson is to be successful managers. Keep that in mind. Successful managers. Now turning to page 145, chapter 8, lesson content, topic, management leads with character. The quote at the top says, management is so much more than just telling people what to do. Remember the question I asked before. It's about guiding, motivating, and encouraging others to not only accomplish their duties, but to respect others and keep the rules while they do. Rules, that is morals. So management is guiding, motivating, and encouraging others to not only accomplish their duties, but to respect others and keep the rules while they do so. So back to my question. Why was the top question asked, why do managers get paid more and do less? My question back to you would be, do you see all the work that they do? Think about it. Do you see all the work that they do? Because from the outer perspective, you might think that you know everything that goes on. And yes, everyone works with different people. But in going through and looking, as we go through and look at what a manager's job is, there's a lot of work that goes to even before a job is set and the plans are laid out. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of communication, negotiating that goes into. But the only thing you might see is, this is the job we have to do. So I would suggest that we would just focus on what we need to do and stop worrying ourselves about if other people are doing their jobs. If we see other people, you think they're not doing what is right, take it to your authority, your manager, your supervisor. But do your best in the job that you are given to do. Because what are companies looking for when they hire managers? Here are a few things they're looking for. They're looking for passion, skills that can be taught, desire, drive to be real and genuine. They're looking for someone who is fit. And companies will actually line up cards during the interview and ask you to line up them based on the value of importance to you. So they'll have cards lined out with various things, and you'll have to line them up based on how much you value them. The next one is preparation. That means taking the time to read upon the business and the job requirements. The next one is resourcefulness. How well do you think on your feet to find solutions? And the last one, the willingness to learn, to be open and improve your approach. Notice, improve your approach. As managers, we are always working, guiding, and supporting others. So you are in charge. Back on page 145. So you are in charge. You are the CEO, a supervisor, a manager, or a boss. Or you are aspiring to take one of these roles. The role of a manager is one of leadership and great responsibility. It can be exciting, frustrating, humbling, and demanding. Managers are responsible for themselves first and foremost, then others within the team, and finally, the overall atmosphere of the environment. In addition to being a role model, you are also responsible for helping your employees deal with and manage problems and concerns so that they can be productive in the role they are hired to fill. Effective management with emphasis on positive character can be complicated and challenging. What makes some successful while others fail? The difference between managers who succeed and those who do not lies in putting into practice the training received in both positive, moral, and effective communication. Now, effective communication was found, we talked about it on page 106 and page 112. So, effective communication, organizational skills. To become a successful manager, you must have self-control. The definition of self-control is found on page 13. And you can also reference how we had a whole chapter, chapter 2, on self-control. And respect for self and others, determination, optimism, but you must also be willing to take the initiative. Be able to and effectively organize, and in personal skills management will be ineffective. Without them, management will be ineffective and counterproductive. Now, you must be willing to take the initiative. In the Building More Excellence book, it talks about taking the initiative. And it says that taking the initiative clearly defines leadership abilities. To take initiative is to take the first step to solving a problem or accomplishing a task. That's what it means to take the initiative. Going on, it says, the great news is that with a little hard work and diligence, anyone can learn to develop a positive moral character and the skills it takes to effectively manage and encourage others to do the same. An added bonus is that learning to manage your positive character in the workplace, you can manage your personal life better as well. Underline that. It all works together. When you figure out one, you'll figure out the other, but it all starts with you figuring out how you are within. In the final chapter, you will learn what it takes to become an effective manager and leader. You will learn how to best interact with employees and to motivate them to put forth genuine effort, to follow the rules, complete all assignments, and get along with each other on both a personal and a professional level. So right there was a lot of stuff, but we're going to get into this as we go deeper into this chapter, because when you think about organization, is that a personality or a character? It's actually a personality. But how many times do we get aggravated because someone is not organized? A lot of times we do, but that's something that they can work on. And something to really keep in mind, I was actually listening to various things about management, and people were saying how if you notice that someone likes to be texted more, then try to text them. If you notice someone likes to be emailed, try to email them if possible. Do what you can to try to make things run a little bit more smoothly. Because remember, managers are responsible for first themselves, and then the others within their team, and finally the overall environment of their workplace. I probably said this a lot of times, that managers have a very important job. And everything, depending on your work area, it can lie within you. I mean, think about if someone below you does something, the people above you are probably going to come to you and ask these questions, right? And this is why also, as we're encouraging people, do you have the desire to be a manager? You want them to realize that this is important, why I, at the level I am now, report to my supervisor. This is why it's important that I do my job diligently, because what it does is it makes the job a little bit easier for the supervisors over me, for the managers over me. And if you go to the second paragraph, or the third to last, so it says, to become a successful manager, you must have self-control, respect for self and others, determination and optimism. You must be willing to take the initiative and be able to communicate. Page 106 and 112, we went over communication. That's page 106 and 112. And let's see. And remember that managers are to encourage employees to be moral people. So there can be times whenever at the last part it says that you'll be given assignments and you'll get along with people both on a professional and a personal level. Never allow that to, I guess for lack of better terms, blind you from what a right choice is. Or that these rules, the rules that are given in a business are for everyone. No matter, if you're related to them, if you're close to them, no, the rules are meant to be kept no matter who it is, who is asking you the question. And that's really an important thing to do, because remember in chapter that we were talking about asking, we said it's always be consistent. Always be consistent. And think about if you, as a manager, you told someone to do something, and then you told another person something different because of your relationship to them or something like that, or because you had more of a personal relationship than a professional relationship. Then if they're in a leading position one day, they might give the wrong instructions. So as managers, we encourage our employees to be moral. And as managers, we are to be that support and that encouragement. We're also let's never bend the rules. Always keep the rules. And that's very important, because that's building our reputation. In this chapter, we're learning that management leads with character. So let's strive as managers and as we teach others to build that positive character and to lead and build a positive character as well. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to the next teacher, so thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to continue right where she left off. She did a great job, didn't she? And we're going to go back to the lesson plan on page 139. If everybody will flip there to the lesson plan. And we're going to be reading procedure 3. Procedure 3. And it says, have class brainstorm ways in which managers or supervisors are leaders. So think about that. How are managers or supervisors leaders? You would want to get that feedback from your class. Emphasize that a manager is a leader of his or her work area. A leader, that means that they should be leading with the example. As a leader, he or she is not just responsible for productivity, but also for the employees and general atmosphere of the work environment. We're going to flip over to page 139. And it says, read and discuss pages 146 through 149. And emphasize that as leaders, they must understand the overall goal of their organization and have knowledge of their work areas. They should also have the training available to help employees improve themselves both personally and professionally. Ask students what they think is one of the most important skills a manager can have. Now, I asked a couple of people before class to give me the answer to that. I asked them, what do you think is one of the most important skills a manager can have? And here's some of the answers that we got from you this evening. One of them was organization, patience, compassion, planning and prioritizing, and then one person said optimism. As a manager, you will have many setbacks and unexpected situations. Your employees will look to you for the advice on how to handle them best. So these are some of the things that a manager should have. Another one was to be a great listener, because they have to know what's going on in their department or business, etc. If they're able to listen, and if you're able to listen and understand them as the manager, then you can help them with the problems that arise. So you can see that that's very important. And the last one was communication. Communication is key. Have you ever been in an area where two people were talking, but they were not communicating well at all? Have you ever witnessed that? It could turn out to be a disaster. So it's very important that we learn to communicate with one another. So continuing on procedure 4 here, it says, explain to students that learning to actively listen can be of a benefit in all aspects of the duties of a manager. Listening actively is a skill that takes practice and commitment. It promotes communication and diffuses and resolves conflicts. Have students read and then discuss as a class the information on active listening found on pages 150 to 151. We're going to start right now on the very first part, which I called A in my lesson plan, and we're going to go to page 146, and we're going to get started in the first part of that procedure. So as we usually do, you want write procedure 4 at the top of your page there on page 146 so that you remember what procedure you're on when you're teaching your class, okay? Or if you're teaching in the actual workplace environment. So we've got management is about leadership. That's our heading. And it says a manager is a leader, and a successful manager has positive leadership skills. The skills of leadership are varied. They range from helping us to cope while under stress to helping us deal with problematic situations. As with all skills, training and then practice are keys to becoming adept. Now that word adept, it actually means expert, proficient, highly skilled. And I'll read that again. Adept is expert, proficient, highly skilled. Okay. So it says, although some people seem to be born leaders, have you ever seen people that just take charge, right? And they're just, you say, well, that person's a born leader. Well, that can be a problem if that person is not the manager. And I've seen that occur. Oh, they're born leaders. They go in and they just start telling everybody what to do, including their manager. And the manager's like, so it's not always great to be that assertive. So yeah, it can seem that they're a born leader, but most of the time it says most of us become leaders through, and I want you to highlight this, education, training, and then this is how I'm doing it, trial and error. Trial and error. By taking the time to study this manual and then applying the knowledge to your leadership ability, you can reduce your trial and error and increase your success. Wouldn't that be great? Now, I wanted to read from the character unit, if you were in that class a while back, and if not, we can get that to you if you want to add this to your notes when you're teaching. But the character unit, page 130. The character unit, page 130. It says, here are a few simple steps to keep in mind. Set your mind in advance that you can be a positive leader. So, you're promoted to leader, manager. Maybe you've never been one. Possibly you've never been one. Set your mind in advance that you can be a positive leader. You can do it, right? That's important. Number 2, value how learning to lead can help you maintain a positive character. So value that, because learning to lead can help you maintain a positive character. And number 3, and this is the most important one because you're going to have to fight the urge to do this. Don't quit. So that's like very important. Put that in the margin there, because when you're teaching, when we're learning to become a leader, whether we're doing it through education, training, or trial and error, or a little mix of everything, the urge to quit is going to come upon us sometimes when we get frustrated. How many of you in this room have ever had an urge to quit a job? Show of hands. Okay, I think just about everybody has their hand up. And anyone that you're teaching this workplace manual, this moral excellence in the workplace, they're going to have had that same feeling within them. But if you can teach them to stick it out, that is going to be such a great moral benefit to them. The job that I'm in now, I've been in that job for 3 decades. And the funny thing is, it was a very, 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 very small company when I started. It was literally, I dealt with the main owner of the company, and it was me and a couple of his children that are grown and married and have grandkids now, and a couple of other people. And I came as a waitress, and then I was plunked into working in an office. And I had no skills at all to work in an office. But the owner of the company was very patient. It was a small company, and it built to where there were hundreds of employees. But I got to learn along the way through the trial and the error, see? So I put a lot of value in don't quit, because there were many times that I wanted to run back to the little diner, grab my tray of dishes, and start waiting tables again, because I had no clue what it was to work in an office, really. A filing system, the desk was a mess, but the patience of my boss was beyond measure. And so that now, as a manager now, in my life, having worked there for many, 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 many years, I think I'm sometimes part of the furniture, but I try to instill those same lessons that were taught to me into the people that I deal with now, to give them the same lessons that were given to me, because it was very valuable information. Okay, so number 1, it says, number 1, successful managers are knowledgeable. Successful managers are knowledgeable. And it says the first step in becoming an effective leader is continually learning and growing in a positive character development through the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Knowing how, and I highlight this part here, knowing how your work environment operates, that's important. and about the people who work there are important too. Let's face it, you cannot be in charge of something that you know nothing about, right? You just can't. One positive character trait is being educated. Educate yourself about your workplace. Gather all the facts that you can to help build a more peaceful work environment by making positive choices. And this is a lifelong process of becoming educated in your particular area. This is not something that you're going to just be like, okay, got this job now, going to learn everything in 10 minutes. And I was training somebody, we had an assistant manager come in to try to take some of the load off of my job, and she said, train me. And I said, you will be training every day for the rest of your life. And there's certain jobs that you just can't sit down and open a manual because there are so many different situations that come up in that job, so many different personalities, so many different things that come up in a day. She said the other day she didn't ever understand what that meant until she started getting in the thick of it. It's an ever-changing, there's no, like, this is the way every day, because there's variables. It's not the same answer across the board all the time because there's different circumstances, and it's just, it would be very difficult to do a manual. So you're ever learning. It's a lifelong process, okay? Now I wanted to share with you something from the character unit, the intermediate series character unit, page 129, that goes along with this. It's a nice reference. It says, one of the keys to learning how to lead is to maintain your positive character. You may suddenly find yourself in a situation where everyone else is doing the wrong thing. Knowing how to be a positive leader can help you get yourself and others out of a bad situation. Taking the initiative and having the courage to stand up for what is right. So you're going to want to learn how to gather all the facts. We're going back to the book now here, because you're being educated, you're educating yourself. Gather all the facts. It helps you to build a more peaceful work environment by making those positive choices. Even if you're making them alone, you're wanting to make those positive moral choices as a leader. For example, take time to become familiarized with the mission statement of your company or organization. Now, it says here, knowing what your organization stands for and its goals, as well as the daily operations, will assist you in the decisions, underline this, decisions you make as a leader. Leaders make decisions. And leaders have to make moral decisions. You have to always make right decisions, positive decisions, decisions that are going to benefit the company as a whole. It might not always be the popular decision with the people that you work with, but you have to look at the whole picture and all the workers as a body and not just one individual worker when you're making a decision. And that's very important that you teach the managers this. They have to know that they can't just make a decision based on a little tiny portion. They have to consider the big picture. Otherwise, we had something take place today where a worker was moved from one area to another area because they were shorthanded in that department. And then all of a sudden, my phone was just going crazy because now the other area was shorthanded because this worker was moved over to this department. And I said, oh, well, we didn't consider the whole picture here, did we? We need to take a look at the whole thing to make sure when we're taking from this area that it's not leaving another area unattended. So you have to take a look, and you have to sometimes talk, and you want to tell your managers this, talk it over with the other supervisors or the other key players that are involved. Don't just make a decision because, well, you know, I'm the big boss. I can make the big decision, and I can just pull this one and move them over here. We have to be considerate and make sure that we're discussing and talking and keeping those lines of communication open. You see how important that would be? Otherwise, you got no one answering a phone or nobody in a particular area. So it says, you will also need to know about the people that you're in charge of. What are their strengths and their weaknesses? Now, if you know that someone has a weakness, possibly they have a weakness with alcohol, you wouldn't want to make them your bartender. If you owned a restaurant that had a lounge, you might want to possibly put them maybe doing a different kind of job in your restaurant. You wouldn't want to say, hey, go ahead and you can make the drinks for everybody. That's just an example, but you would want to know their strengths and their weaknesses. If somebody has a problem with, or they had a problem with stealing, you wouldn't want to put them on the cash register, but they might do very well setting the tables if you were in a restaurant type situation. You know, it always, no matter how long I've worked in an office, it always goes back to the restaurant. And it says, know their strengths and weaknesses and how you can best use them in your organization. And yes, you know, a lot of people get offended when they hear the term use them. But when we're serving in an organization, we are being used. We're serving. We're being used in that organization. And being used is a very valuable thing. It's not like a negative thing, like a lot of people put that negative connotation on it. But if you're not able to be used, then the term is you are useless. I want us to think about that. I want to be used. Because the other end of that is the opposite of that. I would be useless. Use me up to the best of my capability. Let me be used to the benefit of that company. Let me be used to serve everyone, to possibly give them a smile. Whatever your job is, use me up. Well, not all up. Stagger it out a little bit, right? But we don't want to be useless, and that's the important thing. And when you're teaching the managers or the supervisors, that's what they should want to instill in the workers. Let them realize that that's not a negative thing. We want to be useful. We don't want to be useless. We want to be used in the work of that company. Because the ones that are willing to be used, and you see them being used all over the place, doing all these different things, sometimes they eventually end up becoming a manager or a supervisor over a department because they're so useful. And they will let you use them up in various different fields and areas. And when there's a need, they'll jump in and do that and serve in that capacity. So it's a very, very positive thing. Now it says, reviewing your employee records can be very helpful in learning about their character, as well as any areas of concern. Although an employee can be diligent and hardworking, if she is ill-placed or lacks job satisfaction, she might not be productive, and the work environment could be severely affected. And that's another thing about where I work. I didn't know I was a manager until my boss told me that I was a manager. I just went to work every day for years and years and years and decades and decades. And then one day he said, well, you need to tell them you're the supervisor. And I said, I am? And he said, yes, you're the supervisor. And he said, this is your job. You supervise this and this and this. And I said, I do? I really didn't know, because it was a small company that grew into a larger thing. So I really was dumbfounded. I was like, oh, okay, well, what does that mean? Exactly. So that's why I say trial and error. A lot of error, but I still try. So the try and trial, right? But it's very important, because one of the things, the valuable things that he taught me was, when you're placing people in different areas of the workplace, he said, if they like what they do, they're going to do it well. They're going to show up to do it more often. If you put them in something that they don't like to do, in an area that they don't prefer, they're going to call in sick. They're not going to be as productive. And I treasure his words. He's the smartest man in the world to me. And I learned a lot of things from him. But it's true, because there were many jobs that he gave me to do throughout the years of working there, and there are some things that I just didn't like to do, and he realized that quickly, and he moved me out of, he tried my hand at bookkeeping. Worst 5 minutes of my life. I'm not one to, that's just not my thing. I don't have that kind of personality. I just don't prefer to do that. There are people that can sit and not talk to another human being all day long and just have a relationship with a calculator. And that's all they do. And they don't have to talk to another living, breathing person, and they like, oh, I like when the numbers just add up and work out. And I'm like, you like that? Yes, I love when it all comes together. Oh, well, great. I like people. I like dealing with people, talking to people, interacting with people. I like hearing about problems, trying to help solve problems. That's what I like to do. Not too many problems. But it's very important that you like what you do. And so when we're training these managers, these supervisors, we want to let them know that. Because can you see that that would be very important, not to put someone in a job they can't stand? They're just not going to do well at it. They won't excel. So very important information there. Now, there's a quote there at the bottom, and I want to read that. It says, "Get the right kind of knowledge to gain a full understanding." And we want to get the best understanding to understand the people that we work with, the people that work with us, the people that we oversee on a daily basis. It's very important. And now we're moving over to the next page. We're continuing. We're still in Procedure 4. Procedure 4 is a long procedure. And it's number 2, and it says, successful managers are observant. So you want to be that observer. And if you remember, if many of you were in the certification course years back when we were talking about the friendship, and there was the observing stage, the stage where you observed, and you know, when you're dealing with people, especially young teens, when they're making friends, there's that observing. You want to observe people. But as a manager, it's vital that you observe, and it's not like you're not just going to sit on this like high chair and just watch everybody all day and just observe. No, but you want to see, how do they react in certain situations? In our area, where I spend most of my day, sometimes people can come in and they can get upset, like if something wasn't done correctly or they weren't satisfied with something, and you know, they might not be smiling when they are interacting. And I like to watch how the different people who assist them deal with it. Because we've got so many different personalities in the workplace. You know, there's one that's always very pleasant and very smiling, and by the time they leave, they forgot that they were upset when they came in, and everything's fine. And then we have one that's very blunt. So what is the problem? And so, can you tell me a little bit about it? And they're more serious. And so it's just different ways, and I like to observe how the interactions go. That's what you would want to teach the managers to do, because if then the manager finds that possibly somebody would do better in a different part of the office, if they don't do as well, if you want perky people who greet everyone and smile when they come in and make sure that they're taken care of, well, you might need to then pull somebody who's real perky, and they're supposed to be the bookkeeper, but they're not getting any work done because they're like, and then when we went out and, I made him, and I just spilled the white out all over. Well, you might want to move her to the area where it's the more people-oriented part, and then put the person that's more serious into the bookkeeping, because they might do better with the numbers than the people. Do you see the point? So if you're not observing that as a manager or a supervisor, you won't key into those key points that will help you to get your place running like a fine-tuned clock. You know, you want it to go like a fine-tuned clock. Okay, so we'll continue here. It says, successful managers are observant in all areas of their work environment. They take notice. They take time to understand the needs of the people that work with them. So they take notice of their employees who seem stressed, overwhelmed, or dissatisfied. Now think about why that would be important. If I've got someone that is having some emotional problems and I'm the supervisor, this is what we're teaching the managers. Right now we have many workplace shootings that take place, don't we? If you can befriend or bring the person in the office and talk to them and find out what's going on. You know, if you see that something's going on or their work is slipping or they seem depressed, it could be that there was one situation, not where I work, but I had heard where a manager noticed that the work was slipping, but they didn't realize that the man's wife was dying of cancer. So when he came to work every day, he was different. His countenance had changed. His work, he would forget things. Things were going on that didn't normally go on. But the manager found out by taking the time, the care and concern of speaking to the individual to find out what was going on. And it played a key role in allowing that person to continue in their job because then the compassion was shown. You see that? Very, very important. So we've got to be very observant. So if they're overwhelmed, dissatisfied, because if they're dissatisfied, you might just be able to move them to a different area and find something else for them to do where they could get along better. And make it a priority to show that care or concern and to offer support. Support, empathy. You can write this in your margin. Empathy, care, and concern. Very, very important. Sometimes the stress an employee feels might not be job-related, but can nonetheless affect the employee's job performance. Take the time to understand their needs. An effective manager is supportive, regardless of the source of the employee's stress, and would take measures to alleviate the stress if possible. I have one lady that works with us, and sometimes she's in a lot of pain, and sometimes we kind of mother her even though she's older than all of us, and we'll say, "Are you in pain?" And she'll say, "Yes, I'm in a bit of pain today. Do you want to go home?" And she'll make the decision. Does she want to go home or does she want to stick it out? But she sees that we've cared enough to notice that she might be in pain that day. Do you see how that might lift her spirits up? And then she can decide whether she wants to stay or go. So supportive regardless of the source of the stress, and take the measures to alleviate it if possible. Now, in the acceptance unit, I wanted to show this on the overhead. The acceptance unit, this comes from page 13, and you can note this in your margin for when you're teaching this to the managers, because it's helpful. It says, this is page 13, and it says, accepting others means deciding to treat them the way that you would want to be treated. It means putting yourself in their shoes. If I was in pain, would I want to be the one that had to lift all the boxes and bring them in? If I was in pain, would I want to do this? If my husband or my wife were dying of cancer, would I possibly need a couple days off? Would I want to possibly spend some time with them? You know, think about these types of things. Put yourself in their shoes. How would I feel if someone treated me this way? The ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes is called empathy. Having empathy is an important part of accepting and having consideration for others. And in management, it's very crucial. Now, continuing on page 147, it says, a large portion of satisfaction in our lives is derived from the work that we do and the people that we share our work time with. As a manager, be observant of your employees so that you can help and support them in areas where they might be lacking. Work dissatisfaction has the potential to negatively impact other areas of our lives, including our marriages and our ability to parent. And we wouldn't want someone to go home and take it out on their children because they're not liking their job. So be observant, and even in their personal lives as well. We're going to have to stop right there for this evening because we have run out of time. It seems like somebody just wound that clock up really fast. So we're going to take up here next week. And thank you for coming, but please do continue to come because we do all want to learn how to be those great managers and supervisors, okay? So thank you for coming, and we'll see you next week.